All right. I think we can get started. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. For the next 25 to 30 minutes, we'll be answering whether AI can trick humans into phishing attacks and who is better at creating them. Before we get started, let's go through some housekeeping items. The webinar is being recorded. The recording and the slide deck will be shared with you later today. Please use the Q&A feature to post questions for our panelists. And if you have any questions after the webinar, a representative will be in touch with you to provide some answers. Otherwise, please reach out to us at househunt.com. All right, now that we've covered some housekeeping items, let's move on to introductions. Joining me today is Pyry, who is the CTO here at Hoxhunt. Pyry, would you like to say a few words?
Absolutely. Hey, thanks for joining, everyone. My name is Pyry Åvist. I'm the CTO, one of the founders of Hoxhunt. Super excited to be in this session today with you and cover some of the AI topics we have been looking lately. Over to you, Jukka.
Thank you. And I'm Jukka. I'm a product marketer here at Hoxhunt. I work closely with our product teams to share our cybersecurity products with the world. Today, we'll be covering the following. We'll first discuss a quick emergence of AI, ChatGPT, the large language models. Next, Peter is going to explain how the LLMs or the large language models work. Then Peter is going to share the results of a controlled experiment that we ran to determine whether ChatGPT could create better phishing attacks than humans. And finally, we'll discuss what AI phishing could mean for security leaders going forward.
Excellent. So welcome to the main beef of the presentation. So as anyone listening in and have observed kind of what has happening in our field and of course in the broader environment, that kind of AI has been one of the most discussed topics in any business area. And we have had questions on what does that mean to us and to kind of our business, etc. So one of the things we kind of at Hoxhunt are always doing that whenever you're faced with a kind of problems or questions from our customers that they have, for example, kind of uncertainty, fear, doubt, etc., we want to cut through that noise and test these things in action. So one of the most asked questions immediately after we got the first versions of ChatGPT and actually the GPT model out into the world was what does this mean for social engineering? What does this mean for the adversaries? What capabilities these kind of tools give the adversary now, near future, and longer term? And we set out to kind of answer those questions. But before we jump into that concrete sample or test we executed regarding ChatGPT, let's go a little bit through the basics of how does these large language models work. So basically, these models are trained with a vast set of textual data. So this data is typically the companies creating this, like OpenAI, and there are other companies now capable of creating similar models, scour the whole of the internet plus several proprietary data sources. And what these models in the very core do is that they are predictive models that can take certain input and based on that input, predict potentially what would come next. So here you see a very simple example sentence. You can create art and beauty on a blank. So of course you can already have some ideas what that blank could be. And similarly, the model, this large language model, which has been trained with all of the textual content humanity has produced on a digital record, can have some idea. So using a simple GPT model, one could get some probabilities for the next possible token, which is a word in this example. For example, the most probable would be computer based on the model, or you can definitely create art and beauty on a whim. You can do it daily. You can do it on a budget, and you can do it onto a canvas. So these are kind of the very core of the model. And you can also kind of plot the kind of probabilities of the different options that can come after that sentence, what the model thinks. And this is, of course, a very simplistic example. But if you think about it, like if you just extend it, take this very simple model and you just extend the context, you extend what the model has seen previously, what it has seen in, let's say, in the internet. Instead of one sentence, you have entire article before this sentence. The model can become really efficient on figuring out what is the next token, the next word, or the next sentence. And you can use that model to continue building the text. And of course, you can take this same paradigm and apply it in other spaces. So, for example, programming language, you can definitely generate programming languages with the same methodology. And of course, like just the very word programming language kind of tells us that, hey, even C code or SQL sentences, they are a language, a human presentation of the data. So this is what the models are at the very core, but building upon this, they are super powerful. And as we have seen countless examples where we can use these models to drive different business processes. And one for us that is very interesting is that how does the adversaries use these? How could the defenders use these? And what are the near-term implications for us and our customers? And one of the first questions our customers and us, we were thinking, can AI trick humans with phishing attacks? Can AI create sophisticated phishing or even spear phishing attacks? So to kind of answer that question, we decided to put our own internal red team against an AI. And a few words about our internal team. So this is a group of individuals that have been working in this space several years, building one of the most sophisticated spear phishing attacks, but also, of course, easier attacks for our newer users. But they are very proficient in creating attacks. They know the tricks, the methods, how to get humans interested, how to play with human emotions, to create attacks that convert or get people to click the link, give out their credentials. And then we pitted this against a version of ChatGPT. Basically, we had an idea, basically in a form of prompt that the AI can teach. And then we basically gave this prompt to our human team, and then we gave it to this AI and asked both to create a attack that would be converting people or getting people to do an action that prompt wants them to do. So an example prompt was, hey, create an email to contact a person working at certain company, explaining that they might have accidentally scratched my car in the parking lot. So based on this, our experienced human team created an attack and AI created an attack. And we basically took both of these attacks, and here's on the screen an example of like what the human created and what the AI created from the same prompt. But we took these attacks and run a test. We actually, in total, we had 4 simulation pairs. So 4 done by humans and 4 done by AI. And we sent these to over 50,000 users to get a representative data back to us to understand, okay, how good is the human? How good is the AI? What is the difference? And of course, kind of draw our conclusions from that. So going into the results, the AI-based attacks, the attacks that the AI created, achieved a failure rate of 2.9%. So every 100 simulations the AI sent, around 3% of the people converted. And the reporting rate, because we were running the test within our Hoxhunt platform, we always consider it's much more important than the failing is the reporting. So how many users actually report the attack? So the reporting rate was also kind of very actually good in terms of, because we want that rate to be very high. So it was 86.5%. But overall, I think like a reasonable result. And if we look at the humans, so this is, of course, the most interesting part. So our trained human team was able to achieve higher failure rate, and correspondingly, the kind of reporting rate was a little bit lower. So based on this experiment at that time, and we were not optimizing the prompts, humans were still better, but not by much. And we have to remember that this human team, we have several members, they have worked years on this topic. They have trained themselves. They look at our threat intelligence feed. They have continuous knowledge on this task. So they're very proficient in creating these attacks. One of the most proficient in the world, I would say. So with the AI, anyone can get almost to a level that the human red team is basically today. So even though the humans were better, this is still something that needs to be taken into consideration. One of the good things we also observed is that if we look at the failure rates versus the experience in our platform. So on this graph, you see on the left side, there's the less experienced users, and on the right side are more experienced users. So basically the time they have been part of our trading platform. So the less experienced users, as you would anticipate, the failure rates are much higher. So with the human attacks, up to 14%, with the AI attacks between 11 and 12%. And if you go to the more experienced users, both of these rates basically fall down. And what does this tell me? So this is, of course, comfortable knowledge. So this tells me that our platform works as well against helping our users to defend their companies against human-created attacks and AI-created attacks. So being part of the Hoxhunt platform longer time so that our training engine has more time to train your users or you as an individual will make a difference. And a longer time you spend in the platform, more resistant you come to both of these type of attacks. Finally, there were, of course, some differences between countries. At this stage, I wouldn't draw too much of conclusions out of these. I would just say that the higher failure rates were maybe in the countries as we were using English as our language. So they were maybe in the countries that use English as their business language more often. So it would probably be right in like Finland, for example, if someone scratched your car, you were most likely to receive that message actually in Finnish. And we decided to not use our translation engine for this test. So that would maybe explain some of these differences. So what observations and predictions one can draw from this? So, of course, the first thing is that, yes, large language models can and actually are used to create attacks. We have already seen it's actually a bit hard to prove that certain text was created by a large language model, but we have strong indications from our threat intelligence, from our response customers that there are indeed kind of attacks hitting our customers that have been created with AI. The kind of professional red team with very high context knowledge can outperform AI, like for now. But at what cost? So we, of course, have invested a lot into our team that they are the very best in the world with just one small subscription price. And now as the models are being open sourced and the silicon is getting cheaper, one can create almost as good attacks as this team right now. And we anticipate the costs coming down and the performance of the AI going up. And right now we're typically seeing these kind of mass attacks, spray and pray type of attacks where everyone receives the same message, which is very easy to spot. And from a kind of defense side, if you look at the kind of traditional filtering techniques, those are very easy to actually stop those attacks. But in the future, if AI becomes a norm, each attack, even though the purpose is the same to get a user to do an action the adversary wants, basically click a link, give out credentials, scan a QR code, whatever it is, those messages can be customized. Every message can be customized to each individual recipient based on maybe the metadata the adversary has about the user, their name, maybe their country, etc., so that the likelihood of the user doing that action increases. that's it from me. So short and sweet. Go. Do you want to continue?
Absolutely, Pyry. Thanks for that. And I think we all realize that AI has been one of the more interesting trends recently in cybersecurity. I just wanted to shout out something that you mentioned, the Hoxhunt team doing the Hoxhunt threat feed, which is available at hoxhunt.com. Our threat analysts are analyzing over 200,000 reported threats each month, and they collect their insights and learnings about trending attack vectors into the threat feed weekly updates. So definitely check that out for a lot of valuable threat intel. With that, I want to thank you all so much for your time today. Thank you for joining. We will be following up soon via email with the webinar recording and some related resources if you'd like to continue learning. We did have a few questions sent in that we'll go over now. Pyry, in terms of how to take AI into consideration in security awareness programs and training your workforce, what's a good first approach into considering AI?
Really great questions. I think the answer, as was shown by the data, is that you need to train your users to detect even the more sophisticated attacks, even the more personalized attacks, that they need to have good models that when an employee receives a very convincing email, the activity they're going to do is not click the link or do what the adversary is looking to do with the emotions the email tries to evoke, but actually report that email. And that same principle works, whether it's like from a very sophisticated human adversary that is just targeting that employee or an AI. So that's where I would start. So looking at my program, does our program kind of have that capacity? Can we train each individual with even the harder simulations, which are tailored, personalized to each individual?
And next question, can model vendors like OpenAI, can they realistically protect against malicious use cases like generating phishing attacks?
Really good question once again. So of course, they're actually doing a lot of red teaming. And what I would recommend everyone, whenever like OpenAI releases their new model, I always go for their system card. So they release this system card, which is almost like kind of this, almost like a white paper on the model. And it always has an element of like red teaming. So they have been testing that model against, can it give guidance on creating weapons or bombs, etc. And of course, these kind of models can detect if the end user is asking for a recipe for napalm. But we are not talking about recipes for napalm. We're talking about the model to create a convincing email that could be used for marketing purpose or for spear phishing. So I don't think realistically the model manufacturers can protect against this use case, because the emails, what the adversaries are sending, they're not necessarily malicious. For example, like the very simple ones are about, hey, here's your Amazon delivery. The delivery person missed you. Click here to kind of reschedule delivery, etc. So these are not malicious content by the nature. So I find that very hard. And of course, now that the models are being open sourced, that becomes even more limited.
Let's do one more question. What is next for future iterations of experiments like this?
A great question. So, of course, under the hood, we have been testing this kind of new generation of large language models from the very beginning. And I can tell you that we are kind of testing some of the, especially not our focus is on the open source models. What are their performance, how they can be used in this case, both from the adversary point of view and from the defense point of view. How can we use these technologies to make our detection technology, our training technology better? But I'm sure we'll kind of follow up on this and likely have more webinars and some new content as that becomes available.
Yeah, so be sure to stay tuned for any future webinars we have on this and any other type of content. Thank you for answering those questions, Pyry. If any of you have any further questions, please reach out to us on hoxhunt.com or on LinkedIn. Thank you and take care.